Stories from the Dark presents a journey into the shadows where truth blurs with imagination. I'm your host, and you're listening to Beneath the Surface, where we explore cases that challenge our understanding of human nature and the darkness that sometimes lies beneath ordinary lives. What you're about to hear contains mature themes and detailed descriptions of criminal investigations. Listener discretion is advised. Tonight, we dive into the darkness. Narrator Millfield, Nevada, July 2008. A small desert town of just under 6,000 residents, primarily supported by a nearby military testing facility and the travelers passing through on Highway 95. Like many such communities scattered across the American Southwest, Millfield was a place where everyone knew their neighbors, where secrets were hard to keep, and where the vast, empty desert served as both a protective barrier and an imposing reminder of isolation. On July 17, 2008, at approximately 3:17 a.m., every electronic device in Millfield capable of receiving or transmitting a signal activated simultaneously. Cell phones rang with no callers. Televisions switched on to static. Radios blared white noise across multiple frequencies. Car alarms sounded throughout the town. And perhaps most disturbingly, every single resident of Millfield woke at that exact moment with the same inexplicable sensation, a high-pitched ringing in their ears and the unshakable feeling that someone or something was calling to them. This incident, which came to be known as the frequency, would forever change Millfield and the lives of its residents. But to understand what happened that summer, we must first understand the town itself and the unusual series of events that preceded that fateful night. Mayor Richard Collins' Millfield isn't much different from any other small town in Nevada. We got our diner, our gas station, our little downtown with a few mom-and-pop shops. The main difference is our proximity to the Coyote Flats testing range. It's about 20 miles outside town, and no, before you ask, it's not Area 51. Nothing that exciting. Mostly communications technology and radar systems, from what we've been told. But you know how it is with these military installations. They keep to themselves. Narrator the Coyote Flats testing range had indeed been a fixture of the area since the late 1950s. According to declassified documents, it was established during the Cold War primarily to develop and test long-range communication systems that could withstand nuclear interference. By 2008, the base employed approximately 200 civilian contractors and an undisclosed number of military personnel, many of whom lived in Millfield. In the months leading up to July 17th, residents reported several unusual occurrences in and around the town. Narrator Linda Mercer, a retired schoolteacher who had lived in Millfield her entire life, was one of the first to notice something strange. On the evening of March 23, 2008, nearly 4 months before the incident, she observed an unusual pattern of lights in the night sky while walking her dog. Linda Mercer, I've lived here 68 years, so I know what normal aircraft look like. I know what the night sky is supposed to look like out here in the desert. This wasn't normal. It wasn't like anything I'd ever seen. It was a series of lights, arranged in what I can only describe as a geometric pattern, like a perfect hexagon. They didn't move like planes or helicopters. They seemed to pulse in unison, and they were completely silent. In the desert at night, you can hear a plane from miles away. These made no sound at all. Narrator Linda wasn't the only one to observe the lights. Over the next few weeks, at least 12 other residents reported similar sightings, always between the hours of 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. Local authorities initially dismissed these reports as misidentified conventional aircraft from the testing range, but the frequency and consistency of the sightings eventually prompted Sheriff Douglas Hayes to contact Coyote Flats directly. Sheriff Douglas Hayes, I called my contact at the base, Major Williams. We'd known each other for years. He'd come into town for our annual 4th of July barbecue, that sort of thing. When I asked him about the lights, his whole demeanor changed. Got real quiet, real formal all of a sudden. Said they weren't conducting any nighttime operations in that area and suggested our residents might be seeing weather balloons or stars. Then he changed the subject. That wasn't like him at all. Narrator the next unusual occurrence came in late April, when local amateur radio operators began picking up strange interference on multiple frequencies. Jacob Morgan, who had operated a ham radio from his Millfield home for over 30 years, was the first to document the phenomenon. Jacob Morgan, it started as just a bit of static, Nothing unusual in itself, but it kept coming back, same time every night, 3:17 a.m. on the dot. And it wasn't random static. It had a pattern to it. Almost like a voice, but not quite. Like someone trying to speak through the white noise. I recorded it after the third night, started analyzing it. There was definitely a pattern there, a repeated sequence of sounds. I sent my recordings to a buddy who teaches signal processing at UNR. He confirmed it wasn't random. Narrator by mid-May. The interference had spread beyond amateur radio equipment. Residents reported television signal disruptions, cell phone static, and even interference with relatively simple electronic devices, like baby monitors and garage door openers. All of these disruptions seemed to peak at precisely 3:17 a.m. Perhaps most disturbing were the reports of physical and psychological effects that coincided with these electronic anomalies. Dr. Eliza Wong, I started seeing patients with unusual complaints in late May. Insomnia, headaches, ringing in the ears, particularly in the early morning hours. At first, I thought it might be related to seasonal allergies, or perhaps stress from some local economic issues we were having. But the consistency of the symptoms was striking. Almost everyone reported the ear ringing occurred at the same time of night. Several patients also described what I would classify as minor auditory hallucinations, the sense that someone was calling their name, but from a great distance. Narrator Dr. Wong, who had served as Millfield's primary care physician for 11 years, began documenting these cases systematically. By the end of June, she had recorded similar symptoms in 147 patients, nearly 2.5% of the town's population. She reached out to the state health department with her concerns about a possible environmental cause, such as contaminated water or air pollution. Before any investigation could begin, however, another bizarre incident occurred. Narrator on June 30th, 2008, at exactly 3:17 a.m., every dog in Millfield began to bark, howl, or whine simultaneously. Those who were awake at that hour described the sound as chilling and otherworldly. Hundreds of animals vocalizing in unison, creating a cacophony that lasted precisely 7 minutes before stopping as suddenly as it had begun. Sheriff Douglas Hayes, I was on duty that night, driving the perimeter of town. When all those dogs started going at once, I nearly drove off the road. Never heard anything like it. Called in my deputy to make sure I wasn't imagining things. We got flooded with calls, people thinking there was some kind of emergency. But there was nothing, no fire, no break-ins, nothing that would explain it. The really strange part was how it stopped. Not gradually, like you'd expect, but all at once. Like someone flipped a switch. Narrator the following morning. Sheriff Hayes contacted Coyote Flats once again. This time, his inquiry was met with an unexpected response. Sheriff Douglas Hayes, 2 men showed up at my office that afternoon. Didn't introduce themselves, just showed me their Defense Department credentials. Asked me a lot of questions about the incidents in town, took copies of all my reports. When I asked them what was going on, they said they were conducting a routine environmental assessment and that there was nothing to be concerned about. Before they left, one of them suggested I discourage residents from spreading rumors about the incidents. Said it could unnecessarily alarm people. Narrator over the next 2 weeks. Residents observed increased activity around the Coyote Flats testing range. Satellite imagery later obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests showed an unusual concentration of vehicles and equipment on the normally quiet base during this period. Local pilots who regularly flew over the area reported being redirected by air traffic control, establishing a no-fly zone around the facility that hadn't existed before. And then came July 17th, and the night that would change Millfield forever. Narrator at precisely 3:17 a.m., the phenomenon that residents would later call the frequency began. Every electronic device capable of receiving or transmitting a signal activated simultaneously. The power grid surged, causing lights to brighten intensely before returning to normal. And every single resident of Millfield woke at that exact moment, experiencing the same high-pitched ringing in their ears and the distinct feeling that someone was calling to them. Sarah Jensen, a 17-year-old high school student, recorded a video on her cell phone during the event. Sarah Jensen, I woke up to my phone freaking out. It was playing this weird static sound, super loud. My TV turned on by itself too. I grabbed my phone to call my parents, but when I tried to use it, it just kept showing these strange patterns on the screen. So I switched to video mode to record what was happening. That's when I noticed the sound. It wasn't just static. There was something else in there, like voices? Not clear enough to make out words, but definitely voices, lots of them, all talking at once. And the weirdest part? I felt like I understood what they were saying, even though I couldn't actually hear distinct words. Narrator Sarah's video, which lasts 3 minutes and 24 seconds, captured the electronic interference on her devices. Audio analysis later performed by independent researchers identified what they described as voice-like patterns embedded in the static, consistent with what Jacob Morgan had detected on his ham radio weeks earlier, but much stronger. The video also captured something else: Sarah's bedroom window, through which strange, pulsing lights are visible in the night sky, lights arranged in a hexagonal pattern. Throughout Millfield, residents experienced the phenomenon in similar ways, though their reactions varied dramatically. Narrator for most, the event was frightening but brief. The electronic disturbances lasted approximately 17 minutes before all devices returned to normal. Many reported feeling disoriented, anxious, or experiencing brief headaches that subsided within an hour. But for a subset of Millfield's population, exactly 117 residents, the experience was profoundly different. Dr. Eliza Wong, I was awakened by my phone and medical pager going off simultaneously. Then I felt it, the ringing in my ears, but much more intense than what my patients had described. And there was a pulling sensation, like I was being drawn towards something. I found myself getting dressed without consciously deciding to do so. It wasn't like being mind-controlled in a movie or something. I was aware of what I was doing, but it felt right, necessary. I got in my car and started driving toward the edge of town, toward the desert. And I wasn't alone. Narrator Dr. Wong was one of the 117 residents who, seemingly under the influence of an irresistible compulsion, got into their vehicles and began driving toward the desert, specifically in the direction of Coyote Flats testing range. Traffic camera footage from Millfield's Main Street, later obtained by investigators, shows a procession of cars and trucks moving in perfect unison, maintaining exactly the same speed and distance from one another, a precision that would be nearly impossible for human drivers to coordinate. Sheriff Hayes, who had been patrolling the town when the event began, observed the procession and attempted to intervene. Sheriff Douglas Hayes, I tried to pull them over, hit my lights, siren, the works, but it was like they couldn't see or hear me. Not one of them so much as slowed down. I managed to pull alongside Dr. Wong's car and got a good look at her face. Her eyes were wrong somehow, wide open, but not really focusing on anything. And she was mouthing words like she was having a conversation, but there was nobody else in the car. I followed the convoy to the edge of town, called for backup, but by then it was too late. Narrator at the town limits. The procession of vehicles was met by what multiple witnesses described as an overwhelming light that descended from the sky. Security footage from a gas station at the edge of town captured the light, though the intense brightness obscured most details. What is clear from the footage is that the light engulfed the convoy of vehicles for approximately 42 seconds. When it receded, the vehicles and their 117 occupants were gone. The response from authorities was swift and overwhelming. Narrator, within hours, Millfield was flooded with military personnel, government agents, and scientific specialists from multiple agencies. The town was effectively quarantined for 5 days, with no one allowed to enter or leave. Officials cited a possible chemical leak from a passing truck as the reason for the quarantine, though no evidence of such a leak was ever produced. During this period, every resident was interviewed multiple times. Electronic devices were confiscated for safety testing, many never to be returned. Homes of the missing 117 people were thoroughly searched, their personal records and belongings removed by hazmat-suited personnel. Perhaps most telling was the installation of unusual equipment throughout the town. devices that residents described as resembling cell phone towers, but with distinctive spherical components. These remained in place long after the quarantine was lifted. Mayor Richard Collins, they told us the towers were temporary atmospheric monitoring stations related to the chemical leak. They're still here, 5 years later. Nobody talks about them anymore. They've just become part of the landscape, like the cacti and the mountains. But we all know they're watching us, listening to us, waiting to see if it happens again. Narrator, as for the 117 missing residents, the official explanation given to their families was perhaps the most troubling aspect of the entire incident. Sheriff Douglas Hayes, I was there when they told the families. Government men in suits, very formal, very rehearsed. They claimed there had been a mass psychotic event triggered by contaminated water from a previously unknown underground chemical waste site. Said the missing people had experienced delusions and had likely wandered into the desert in their confused state. Search teams were dispatched, they said, but no bodies were found. They offered substantial financial settlements to the families with non-disclosure agreements attached, of course. Some signed, others didn't. Those who refused the money and kept asking questions, well, they started experiencing problems. Tax audits, job losses, mysterious home break-ins where nothing was taken. Eventually, most of them left town. Narrator, in the 5 years following the incident, there have been numerous attempts by independent researchers, journalists, and family members to uncover the truth about what happened in Millfield. These investigations have been consistently hampered by government resistance, missing or heavily redacted documents, and the reluctance of many Millfield residents to discuss the events publicly. However, some information has emerged through whistleblowers and Freedom of Information Act requests. Narrator, in 2010, a former contractor from Coyote Flats testing range, speaking on condition of anonymity, claimed that the facility had been conducting experiments with non-standard communication methods designed to transmit information directly to the human brain, bypassing conventional sensory channels. According to this source, the technology was originally developed for battlefield communications, but had evolved into something else. Documents partially declassified in 2012 confirm that Coyote Flats was involved in a program called Project Resonance, described as research into alternative consciousness-mediated information transfer methodologies. Most details of the program remain classified, but budget allocations suggest it was a major focus of the facility's work from 2005 to 2009. Perhaps most disturbing is what happened to those who remained in Millfield after the incident. Dr. Eliza Wong's replacement, Dr. Marcus Stevens, noticed an unusual pattern in his patients' medical records. Dr. Marcus Stevens, when I took over the practice in 2009, I reviewed all the previous medical records to familiarize myself with the community's health profile. What I found was concerning. In the year following the incident, there was a 40% increase in reported sleep disorders, a 63% increase in migraine headaches, and most notably a 78% increase in what we call auditory processing disorders, basically problems with how the brain interprets sound. But the really strange thing was the timing of these symptoms. An overwhelming number of patients reported that their symptoms were most acute at or around 3:17 a.m. Narrators, some residents reported even more unusual experiences in the years following the incident. Linda Mercer, about 6 months after it happened, I started hearing voices in my house. Not like a hallucination. These came through my radio, my TV, even my landline phone when no one was calling. Always between 3 and 4 in the morning. Always the same voice, though I could never make out what it was saying. I recorded it once, took it to Sheriff Hayes. He listened to it, and I've never seen a man go so pale so fast. He told me to get rid of the recording and never speak of it again. Said it was for my own safety. Narrator Sheriff Hayes refused to comment on this alleged incident in our interview. When pressed, he abruptly terminated our conversation. As for Sarah Jensen, whose cell phone video captured part of the phenomenon, her story took a different turn. Sarah Jensen, after that night, I started having these dreams, I guess you'd call them, except they didn't feel like dreams. They felt like messages. I would see the people who disappeared, Dr. Wong, my math teacher, Mr. Calloway, my neighbor, Mrs. Diaz. They were trying to tell me something, but I couldn't quite understand. In these dreams, they were somewhere else, somewhere. Impossible. Like reality with a different set of rules. And they were being studied, observed. Sometimes I'd wake up and find myself writing or drawing things I didn't understand, complex mathematical equations, bizarre geometric symbols. My parents got worried and took me to specialists who diagnosed everything from PTSD to temporal lobe epilepsy. None of their treatments helped. Narrator, what Sarah shared with us next was something she never told anyone before. Not her parents, not her doctors, not even the government investigators who interviewed her repeatedly after the incident. Sarah Jensen, 2 years ago, I started receiving emails from Dr. Wong's old account, the one that had been shut down after she disappeared. The emails contained strings of numbers and letters that made no sense to me. I thought it was a sick joke at first. Maybe someone had hacked her account. But then I noticed a pattern in the code. It was the same pattern I'd been drawing unconsciously in my notebooks for years. When I applied a decryption method based on my drawings, I still don't know how I knew how to do this. A message appeared. It said, "We are still here. The boundary is thinning." 317. Narrator Sarah showed us these emails and her decoded interpretations. While we cannot verify their authenticity, cybersecurity experts who examined the metadata confirmed that the emails originated from servers physically located at the coordinates of the Coyote Flats testing range, despite being sent years after Dr. Wong's disappearance. Even more compelling is what happened on July 17, 2013, exactly 5 years after the original incident. Narrator, at 3:17 a.m., a small number of Millfield residents, precisely 17 of them, all of whom had close personal connections to the missing 117, reported waking simultaneously with the same symptoms as the original event. Electronic devices activating, ringing in the ears, the sensation of being called. But this time, something new happened. Each of these 17 individuals reported receiving the same visual image in their mind. A clear picture of the 117 missing people standing together in a vast, white space, looking directly at them as if across a window. And these 17 people all heard the same message, spoken in unison by the missing. The frequency was just the beginning. They opened a door that cannot be closed. We are the first. We will not be the last. Narrator, since that night, there have been no further mass incidents in Millfield. But residents continue to report occasional electronic disturbances, particularly around 3:17 a.m. The strange towers installed by the government remain in place, monitoring something. And the Coyote Flats testing range, once a relatively open facility where civilian contractors came and went freely, is now one of the most secure and secretive military installations in the country. What really happened to the 117 missing residents of Millfield? Was it, as the government claimed, a mass delusion caused by environmental contamination? Or was it something far more extraordinary, an experiment in consciousness that opened a door between our world and somewhere else? A door that, according to those who supposedly passed through it, cannot be closed? Narrator, there is one final piece to this puzzle, something shared with us by Jacob Morgan, the ham radio operator who first detected the strange signals months before the incident. In 2015, 7 years after the event, he picked up a new transmission on an unusual frequency. Unlike the earlier interference, this signal was clear, undistorted. It contained just 3 words, repeated in Dr. Eliza Wong's voice. "They're coming back." The transmission ended with a date, July 17th, 2025. As of this recording, that date is still in the future. Whether it will bring answers, more questions, or something else entirely to the town of Millfield remains to be seen. But one thing is certain. At 3:17 a.m. on that day, many residents of this small desert town will be wide awake, listening for a frequency that changed their lives forever. Narrator, some stories leave us with clear conclusions, with the satisfaction of mysteries solved and questions answered. The Millfield frequency is not one of those stories. Instead, it leaves us with the unsettling possibility that in the vast desert night, signals are being transmitted and received, communications not meant for human ears, yet reaching into human minds nonetheless. And perhaps most disturbing of all is the question no one in Millfield wants to ask aloud. if something came through from the other side of that frequency. What might have gone through from our side? This has been The Frequency, Episode 4 of Beneath the Surface, a Stories from the Dark production. Join us next time as we explore another case from the shadows of our fictional world, where ordinary places harbor extraordinary stories. The following was a dramatization of events that took place in Millfield, Nevada, a place that exists only in our collective imagination. The stories, people, and places depicted are fictional. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. This has been Beneath the Surface, a Stories from the Dark production. Remember, sometimes the most terrifying stories are the ones that make us question what we believe to be true. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to our channel and sharing this with others who appreciate immersive audio experiences. Until next time, I'm your host, inviting you to look beneath the surface of the world around you. Because in the shadows, there are always stories waiting to be told. The stories presented in this podcast are works of fiction. Any resemblance to real people or actual events is entirely coincidental.